Welcome again, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Niger Innis Presents the Trump Revolution, a part of the TvAbraham network. Well, folks, we are really blessed to have with us today on as a guest someone that you have seen, certainly, if not in TV, definitely the movies. I'm talking, of course, about Dean Cain. Dean has been in over 100 movies, going way back to 1976 when he got his start, and he's been in a number of course, his movies are great movies from God Is Not Dead to Out of Time, where he was opposite Denzel Washington, The Perfect Husband, and the list goes on and on and on. Like I said, he's done over 100 films, and of course, he's done made appearances or starred in over 100 television shows as well. Some of your favorites, like A Different World, A Blast from the Past, Burn Notice, and even making a trip onto Frasier, if you will. Dean, you have had a spectacular career, and we are really blessed to have you on the Niger Innis Presents the Trump Revolution broadcast. Welcome to the show.
Honored to be here, Niger. Let me just tell you what, though. A lot of things you read off there, but I'm just getting started. I'm very, very young and just getting started.
I believe you, brother. I believe you, and we're rooting for you. People like yourself and several others have been engaged in, I want to say, almost like an angelic endeavor within Hollywood. And of course, we know about conservatives within Hollywood, but you take it a level above that because you actually engage in films that have an abashed Christian focus and promoting Christian values. Talk about that a little bit.
So, I make all sorts of movies, but when I can choose, and people think actors just pick and choose, and that's not entirely true, especially at the very beginning of careers when you're trying to build a resume and do things. But in 2000, my son was born, which is 3 years after I started doing Lois and Clark. I mean, ended Lois and Clark playing Superman, and I started doing Ripley's Believe It or Not. I hosted the show, made the show so I could be around my son. I didn't want to take a series. I ended up in a custody battle with my son's mother, and so I couldn't travel and do things. Had to turn down several series, including Band of Brothers, and some other great things. But it just had give me the choice: be a father or go do these things. I'm going to be a father.
I think you made the right choice, brother.
God bless it. Thank you. Well, my father, I never knew my biological father. He was Army. My mom and he divorced before I was born, or he never saw me in the flesh. My dad, who adopted me when I was 4, is my dad. And I was very blessed to have him in my life. So I got to do all these wonderful films and do these things. And then when my son was born, I started to want him to be able to be on set or see my films or do things like that. So I started making some sweeter films. I also couldn't travel too far because of the custodial orders. You don't want, I wasn't gonna risk anything with my kid. And so I started making a lot of Hallmark movies and things like that. And then I started, when my son was 5 years old, the idea of faith, faith is something I was always on search for and thinking about. I think we all are at various times in our lives, if not our entire lives. And so when he was born, and when he was about 5, he realized at some point in time he was going to die. And I had to explain to him faith and God and life and death and afterlife. And
I hope not prematurely. You mean just eventually die? Eventually,
yes. Nothing premature. Yeah. But just so you know that it would happen at some point in time. And, when you find out your own mortality, like animals run around, there's no I only got, 7 more years to go, or they don't think in those terms. We do as humans. We're sentient, that we know we're going to pass. So I started making a lot of movies that he could watch, and I really started to enjoy them. In fact, God's Not Dead and some other movies that really sort of revolutionized Christian filmmaking, if you will, by not banging people over the head with scripture, right, and that sort of a thing.
The great thing about those films, I think many of them coming out of Angel Productions,
Angel Studios,
they are, you could just throw them into the batch of regular, just entertaining Hollywood and TV films, and they stand on their own. You're right,
absolutely. But it gets you the message.
Yes,
the message is there. Some of the earlier Christian movies, and I'm still involved in some that do this, especially with this company JC Films that I work with a lot, because they're a not for profit. trying to get young Christian filmmakers involved. And I think that's hugely important with today's creators and things. So people always come up to me and say, how do you get involved in these movies? How do you get involved in any movies? My kid wants to be an actor. Best way I know is to go through this, my buddy, Jason Campbell at JC Films, because he's doing them for not everybody's volunteering. I'm giving my time. Everyone's giving their time. So you're able to get on camera and do some things. And it's wonderful. But the idea of trying to change the culture, they say politics is downstream from culture. So if you have all of these faith-based movies and people like them, and they do, in fact, every studio now has a faith-based arm, then you can make these.
That. How about that?
That's new.
That's tremendous. And your arc of your career, as you said, you're just getting started. But of course, and thank you for mentioning perhaps your most famous role, which is for 4 years you were Superman, TV Superman, Lois and Clark: The Adventures of Superman. I'm sure that it was a terrible burden to have to work with Terry Hatcher, huh? That must have been real tough, huh, Dean?
Let me tell you, the struggles that I go through, Niger, are just. But someone's got to do it. If it wasn't me, maybe it was you or somebody.
You had to make the sacrifice. My goodness.
I'll tell you this, though.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this. Sure. I think she's the greatest Lois Lane of all time. I think she drove the show, and it was wonderful for me as a brand new actor to have her and her experience and have her sort of do that. It was wonderful to react off of her. But, I had to kiss her all the time.
Oh, the God, what pain. What?
That's just it. As a kisser, I got to rate her on a scale of 10. I'm going to give her an 11.
I was going to say 12.
It was an absolute pleasure each and every time.
So she's an outstanding actress, and of course, one of the most beautiful and sensuous actresses in the world. I'm sure it was quite a burden, but the beautiful thing about the series was the chemistry between you guys, the wit, the drama. It was really good stuff, and it was one of the great shows, and I think is a part of eternal Hollywood history. Well,
I'll take that.
You started, as I said, at a young age, and it seems to me that when you were in high school, you got the bug because you had classmates like Rob Lowe and Charlie Sheen. Was he just as crazy then as he is now?
I assume you're
unfortunately.
I assume you're referring to Charlie, not Rob.
Well, that's for you to tell us.
No, Charlie wasn't very crazy in high school. I played baseball with Charlie forever. I knew his brother Emilio. My dad directed Young Guns with Charlie and Emilio and Kiefer Sutherland and Lou Diamond Phillips and Casey Shamasco, Dermot Mulroney, that whole bunch. So Sean Penn, Chris Penn the Penns in my family were super close. And so for me, this shows you how naive I was. There is a certain peace in being completely naive. I thought everybody grew up in Malibu, California, on the beach, and their parents made movies, which I didn't really understand that movies were fake, and because I didn't deal with it much. I would just go do stuff, and all I wanted to do was go play sports and surf and whatever.
You were a football star and even got drafted in the NFL.
Yeah, I played for the Buffalo Bills the day after the draft, undrafted free agent, before anybody gets mad at me and yells at me. But Bills are still my team. You can see that helmet right there, baby.
You're a loyal man with all the.
And I got my Princeton helmet over here.
That's right. Ivy League man. That's right. You attended and graduated from Princeton as well.
Yes, sir.
Played with their football team. Yep.
100%. Still holds a couple NCAA records, which got me noticed enough to get me over to Buffalo. And then I got hurt early. And as Coach Marv Levy said, it's really tough to make it in the NFL. Heck, we cut Superman.
That's great.
It was not that funny, Niger. Not funny. Nothing funny about that, sir.
The only reason, and in fact, you really weren't cut. You were injured, from what I understand. Yes. Yeah, you had a knee injury, I believe.
Yeah, but I'm not going to let that little technicality stand in the way of Marv Levy's fantastic point. That was just brilliant.
Guy.